Welcome to the Black Roundtable. I'm your host, Ryan Emerald, and this space was created with intention. Before we begin today's conversation, I want to take a moment to honor my father, Daryl Caston, who passed away this weekend. This episode and this conversation is for him because he shaped the way I understand love, presence, and what it means to show up today, and we want to carry that forward with us with today's conversation. So today's conversation is titled, What It Means to Be Him, and we're centering the identity, the experiences, and the realities of Black men, from how manhood is defined to how it's performed, to the pressures, the expectations, and the emotions that often go unspoken. Today, we're not just talking about Black men, we're listening to them, because too often the world tells Black men who they're supposed to be without ever asking them who they actually are. But today, we're unpacking that, so this is the Black Roundtable. So we're going to start with who I'm honored to have seated here with us today, and we're joined by voices who each bring something real, layered, and necessary to this conversation. So first, we're going to start with Professor Jermaine Archer. He is a Black Studies scholar, an educator, and someone who challenges us to think deeper about identity, history, and how we understand ourselves. Secondly, we have Professor Byron Hurt. He's a documentary filmmaker whose work explores masculinity, culture, and the lived experiences of Black men. Then we have President Timothy Sams. President Sams, who we are honored to have on our panel today. He's a leader who navigates both visibility and responsibility at the highest level. And then we have our students, Michael George Davis Anderson, and he's a senior studying liberal arts with a focus in history and psychology. And then we have Brendan Lipford, a former elementary teacher and returning student in the Master's Liberal Studies program. And Brendan is bringing perspective shaped both by study and experience. So firstly, I want to start by thanking all of you gentlemen for being here today and bringing your voices to this table. And then I want to ask you all how you're feeling today.
Well, firstly, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for inviting us. And thank you for hosting this conversation. I'm excited.
Good.
To delve into this conversation we rarely get an opportunity to explore.
Right.
So thank you for this.
Thank you. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you, and my condolences, my deep condolences to you and your entire family on the loss of your dad.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say the same thing, absolutely. Thoughts and reflections and prayers with you and what you said was so meaningful. It's just important to, you said the word listen to men, listen to Black men. So really appreciative that you would have us here and honored to be among these distinguished guests.
Thank you guys.
Like same goes for me too. My condolences go out to you and your family. It's a pleasure being here and always working with you. I see what you're doing for not just Black people, but for the rest of our community and society. So thank you.
Thank you.
Because I'm in the forefront to say this, obviously condolences, but, it's highly anticipating to always be in this roundtable just to discuss, topics about, Black history, et cetera, but this is a topic to talk about being, us Black men together.
So now that we have introduced each other and we know who's seated at the table, I want to start at the root of it all. So my first question for you guys is, what does it mean to you to be a Black man?
Well, I think what it means to be a Black man is someone who is courageous, who is strong, not just physically, but mentally, and someone who doesn't give up, who face the grind hard and stern, but also having, I think, vulnerability, which is hard for, I think, Black men. We are always taught to be strong, no matter what gets in our way, what gets us down, and we're never taught to speak about our problems, our struggles, and that's what I think a man is. To always have a conversation with someone, a friend, a family member, or even God, and just be able to express ourselves without being told expressing ourselves is feminine
Right.
or girly, as you know, they always say, boys supposed to be strong, not sad, not crying. But that is what a man is sometimes, and what a man could be, is sad and be emotional and expressive. So, yeah, that's what it means to be a man.
Okay. I'm curious to see what you think, Professor Hurt.
Well, you know, I think for me, being a black man is being something separate and apart from any other race of maleness in our society, I think. Because historically, black men have been targeted, have been stripped of our manhood, or there have been many attempts to strip us of our manhood and our masculinity. We've been vilified and criminalized and demonized historically through literature, through movies, and almost any form of media that has been created. Black men have been seen as inferior to other groups or other races of men, while at the same time we have been the envy of the entire world.
Right.
Because of our sense of manhood and you know, the variety of gifts that we bring to the world in terms of our culture. So for me, being a black man is there is no one definition of being a black man. We black men define who we are as black men, not the other way around.
Right.
So I deal with media, right? And one of the things that I say to my students all the time is that, you know, many of the images and the representations of black men and black masculinity have been created for us, not by us.
Right.
And we often buy into some of the images and representations that we have nothing to do with in terms of their creation. Who we are as black men is much more varied, much more expansive, much more holistic than we've ever been given credit for.
I agree. Y'all want to unpack on that? I want to know what Professor Archer thinks.
Okay.
What is being a black man to you, Professor Archer?
I think that
Brendan, keep your thought.
I think that Brendan and Professor Hurt here, Byron, have really captured some of, you know, much of what black men have to encounter and have to engage with historically and even today. For me, I'm always interested in these sort of questions about, and Byron had mentioned this sort of in his concluding response there, concluding remarks, just the balance, right? The balance of perspective and you know, the balance of narratives, historical balance, and it's often hard to capture. But when I think of African American men, of course, you know, there are a number of words that come to mind. Resiliency, of course, in spite of seemingly insurmountable challenges. But you know, this sort of harks back to the retrospective that Byron and I did on the arc of his work, when we were talking about in our early preliminary conversation, and I think this came up when we actually showed, when we were showing some of his films, and we've talked about this in class, Frederick Douglass, right? One person who was the most photographed American of the 19th century, right? And so when I think of two-parent households, those didn't get disrupted really until the Great Depression, right? African-American two-parent household. So when we think about, there's this notion that slavery destroyed the black family. Slavery was absolutely diabolical,
Right.
crippling. But the sustenance of extended kinship, extended family, extended kinship affiliations, the trend to reunite and to come together after conflict, after wars, after movement, I think speaks to just in spite of that word, sort of resiliency.
So we all have expectations on us, right? When did you all realize that your expectations that were being pushed on you as a black man were a little different, and what made those expectations happen?
You know, I'll try to respond to the first question and this question
Okay.
simultaneously. I think about black maleness in twofold. One relates to, well, I think the broader context for me is consciousness, awareness, right, of one's black maleness, right? And in association with that, it strikes me that so much of the answer to that question relates to how one responds to what happens to black men, right? And then we describe that black maleness that is in reaction to maybe white supremacy, to some degree male supremacy, right? Et cetera, right? Or white male supremacy, should I say. And that's kind of how we often describe black maleness, right? Resilient, able to, persevere, et cetera, et cetera. For me, as I think about my consciousness, I think about African men as creators, as actors, not as those who have been acted upon and then derive an identity from that. That if I think of myself as a free person, then I have to explore the moments where I was not acted upon and that I understood myself as a person who created history, created family, created community, inventions, et cetera, right? And in that level of consciousness, I think of maleness quite differently.
Okay.
I think of it in terms of partnership, or what Clenora Hudson Weems might call complementarity, right? That I think much more about my role to society, my role to my people, than I do my maleness, per se, as a defining force, right? That the belief is under a different kind of context than the way in which African communities construct themselves. The belief is simply that we play a role, and we do not define roles based upon the Western notion of sex or gender, right? Outside of procreation, right? Which is standard, which is basic, right? But that my role and responsibility is based upon what I exhibit to be my best capabilities. And in that, my maleness gets understood, and what's fascinating and wonderful, and dare I say, liberating about that, is that those roles are not prescribed according to who you are or whatever your sex is, if you will. It is based upon your capability. So I'm allowed to be great in multiple ways, and not in a traditional Western European male construct that my greatness has to come through the way in which the West has constructed that. But I'm able to be great as a tailor or a seamstress, or able to be great as a child rearer, or able to be great as a farmer, or able to be great as a hunter, in so many ways. And so I'm not bound, right? I'm actually free to explore and become who the people have determined they need me to be, and therefore are going to allow me to be.
That made me think of Frederick Douglass, the mental liberation, right? So you're saying in your mind, you see yourself this way, and you believe that, and you move according.
Yes.
But when it comes to the way the world looks at you, do you care, or
No. My grandfather, not to monopolize, I would say I experienced two phases of what might be my maleness. The first was the one at which I was reared. Right? And the second one I chose. Right? Consciously, right? And at first, when my grandparents gave me 3 things to live by: 1, leave everybody better than when you found them.
Okay.
And that was my responsibility to humanity, right? The second was from my grandfather, who said, it's not what they call you, it's what you answer to, right? So preoccupy yourself with who you are and what you answer to, and not what they call you, right? And thirdly, my father said to me, don't take wooden nickels. So ask for integrity, ask for honesty. That's how I was reared. That second one from my grandfather equipped me, even as I kind of came into a different level of awareness. People will always have opinions about me. What matters is what I think about myself, right? And for me right now, I worry about this idea called terms, right? Terms are simply, what's the basis upon which we're engaging? If we're engaged, you're engaging on A, I'm engaging on B, I really don't care. Because our terms are not the same. And we spend so much time arguing with people whose terms are vastly different than ours. And I really don't have a whole lot of time
Right.
to do that with folks. Because they're trying to get somewhere else, I'm trying to be free. And they're trying to, at some level, understand me, and their deeper understanding can further enslave me. I'm not interested in that. If you're not committed to my freedom, I'm not bothered by it, because our terms are incongruent.
Yeah, I would just add quickly, and so on the mark with some of the things that I've been thinking about, in the influence, the patriarch influence that President talked about. The through line for me, and I think for our community, that often doesn't get talked about as much as it should, is and it often gets awkward when you have to talk about it in public spaces, but the through line of whatever anyone's individual connection is to a higher power, right? And I think, being able to articulate that with comfort, historically, our community was able to do that with ease, in these different sort of spaces. And I think because of the multiplicity of voices and beliefs and perspectives, which invite us to be thoughtful, I think it's also okay to just invite and to acknowledge the higher power, which sort of we all surrender to. And I was just thinking about, and I'll be quiet for the rest of the show. I promise.
No, please don't.
No, I'll be quiet. I'll be quiet. Yeah. But I was just thinking about what everyone was talking about calls to mind. For me, I haven't fully formed it, but the expansion of Du Bois' sort of double consciousness, right? Just the multiplicity of, framing how folk think about different forms of identity, and not conventional forms of how they're talked about today, but can I be a tailor, right? Can I, be a professor? Can I be a DJ, right? Can I be a poet? Can I be a mechanic, right? Can I be a father, right? And I think terms, boxes, don't really allow and invite for our improvisation.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I want to ask one more question before we shift. I want to know who or what shaped you guys' ideas about what manhood was growing up.
Well,
so was there like any specific person, or go ahead, Mike.
Personally, my grandfather, God rest his soul, was a conscious influence on my vision of what being a man is. Black man, a man overall, is being a mentor, a conscious influence on your ability to do what you want to do in life. If you, again, not label us as, what we want to be, but what you want, for yourself. And I feel like, a lot of us, men have a duty to acknowledge that, personally.
All right, so I want to shift us really quickly into what it means to carry Black identity. So I want to know from you guys, how do you navigate being respected while not always fully feeling like you're seen or understood in certain spaces?
I can start.
Okay.
The first question related to my Black male identity. This one relates to moments where people respect you. And
Right.
certainly as a president, that comes into question a great deal, right? For me, one is the career or the job that I do, and that's the presidency, right? And it comes with certain accoutrements, right? Ways in which things happen throughout the course of being a president. And certainly I'm obliged to have a sense of what it means to be a president, what to expect, and the hazards associated with it, right? And so with that understanding, I just simply navigate through that experience as a president. And certainly my Blackness and maleness enters those spaces and those moments. The way I deal with it personally is very different. I think you heard a little bit of that, where I don't Really, I worry about, at the very most, who's saying it and what the basis of their saying it is. And it's simply based upon that. I don't believe you respect me unless I choose to be disrespected, right? And certainly people look at moments, and what I'm very well aware of, other black folks feel disrespected if they see me being disrespected. I'm clear about that, but you're the president. What I'm interested in is black folks worrying much more about their agenda, the things we seek to accomplish in the world we seek to build, than whether or not my feelings were hurt.
Okay.
Right? I am very clear that we come from a great many of our cultures, particularly in the Caribbean, is respect-based, while on the continent is much more honor-based, right? Being very well aware of those things, I get when people get in their feels about it, right? But on balance of things, I worry about where we're going, whether we're on track to getting there, right? That is Tim, the African male. Tim or President Sams, right? I do the job. And in moments where respect gets called into question, I handle that in a very professional way because I accept those terms of that career, right? I don't get into over here, right? I stay in that space because that space is governed by a certain set of conventions that I have committed to, right? So going back to this question about the duality, Du Bois's duality, that would be my duality, right? That over here, certain things are expected. Over there, I'm about a different project, and over there being as an African male.
Have you had any moments where, like,
That's good.
people, when you walk into a room, people may assume you're the underdog or not who you are? Like, for example, Viviana Russell, she told me she went into a meeting one time and people started to tell her, can you get us some coffee? And she was like, I'm the legislator here. I'm here to. And eventually she didn't have to prove herself. It was proven eventually. But initially when she walked into the room, they automatically thought she was here beneath them.
I think we all have that experience. I mean, that happens quite often. For me, those things aren't that terribly important to me.
Okay.
You know, because I'm committed to my agency.
Okay.
Right? It's what I respond to. Right? I don't walk out the door and worry about what the world is going to do to me. I walk out the door and ask what contribution to my people and to humanity I'm going to make every single day, and the rest becomes noise.
Right.
Part of what he said too is he's doing and has done the work.
Right.
Right. And so, you know, or you alluded to that, right? And so I think, and you know, we're all, you know, maybe at somewhat different stages, maybe, you know, the three, you know, sort of president faculty members are a bit closer than the students here. So when you ask this question in terms of reflection, I think it's interesting. But I think there is, you know, the arc of the president's career, or somebody that, a long filmmaker who has 13 plus films, a professor who's been in there for a while, you're doing the work. And not that you're not paying attention to things that we've paid attention to since, right, we were in the sandbox. We've done the work and we've been able to close loops.
Okay.
Right? And I think you have to keep going. So I
Right.
think there's that's part in what I sort of hear you saying. Not that, I mean, if anyone wants to unpackage an analytical conversation about identity and you know, PhD in African American history, Dr. Sands, right?
Okay.
And you know, but moving the caravan along, right? So on a day-to-day, you know, that piece, and you sort of look at maybe not, you know, in obvious ways the boxes that you checked, but you have to walk with that,
Right.
you know, in some sort of way, because we're leading, right? If I come into a classroom and they, you know, they look at me like, okay, what can you teach me, right? Well, in a week or two they're gonna find out, right? And I can't be concerned about them not thinking, if I'm, you know, if I come in my leisure looking like Fancy Mike here, right? What say you?
Well, I wanted to speak to, if I could, this idea of respect, and do I feel respected and do I respect myself? As a filmmaker who has made a number of different films for public consumption, I have a certain profile that places me in public view. And
Right.
so from that vantage point, I do receive a lot of external validation, in which I do receive a lot of respect based on my work as a filmmaker and also the work that I have done in the gender violence prevention field as well.
Yeah.
And so I do feel that as a person, I do feel respected
Okay.
in my field, right? I feel respected at home. I feel respected by my mother and my sibling and my family members, right? The people whose lives really matter to me.
Right.
I feel a tremendous amount of respect. But do I get the same level of respect as a Ken Burns? Or do I get the same level of respect as a Michael Moore? Or the same level of respect as a Alex Gibney? White male filmmakers who do the same exact thing that I do, but are oftentimes given greater resources, funding, money, exposure, opportunities to tell stories about any subject that they want to explore,
Right.
whether it's race, whether it's history, whether it's whatever, sports. I don't have that same luxury at this particular time. And I would have to say that my black maleness probably has a lot to do with that,
Yeah.
if I'm being completely honest about that.
That's good. That's good.
And you know, I appreciate the way he answered the
I do
question.
too.
And you know, in the vein with which he answered that question, I'd say the same, or say something very similar. But you know, Jermaine said you got to put in the work. And at some point, when you know you've put in the work, right, it's very easy to make a decision or to base your understanding of that moment on disrespect as opposed to not being prepared. I say to students all the time, there's this adage in the academy that says, he was the term, he who has not read shall not speak.
Okay.
Right? I carry that.
He dropping gems.
When it was determined that I could speak, I didn't worry about whether or not I was qualified anymore. Right? I don't worry about that anymore. You know, I had to say to a faculty member who told me faculty was upset and such and such and such, and he tried to get disrespectful. I said, let me remind you, I'm still the president. Right? That's much more for him than not me, because I don't question my being the president because I put in the work. Right? And that's at that point, you know, there's so many distractions that are hurled toward us. So many in the course of a day that are hurled toward us that are designed to get us off the dime. Right? Once someone says, you have earned that position, preoccupy yourself with something else. Do something else. But don't let them get you off the dime of your greatness and that work that you perform there, right? So I don't worry when people say, well, we question such and such. I can question a whole lot of things. You do. I don't spend my days worrying about that because I've done the work and I'm the president, right? But I will say, and I'm gonna do it, Jermaine, I'm gonna shut up after this. I will say, under the guise or aegis of the president, I'm the president for everybody, right? But I am very clear about the way black students see,
Okay.
right? I'm clear about the way black faculty and clear about the way the staff see me, right? And I'm clear about the role of respect in those roles.
Right.
You know, calling me President Sams when I say to faculty, call me Tim. No, I'm calling you President Sams. I get that. I get that, yeah.
So 2 seconds, two
Okay.
seconds, just while it's top of mind. Part of what I'm thinking about, listening to what's been said, it's so timely and so important. So having made some advancements in our careers, we also recognize that respect should be a through line for every person.
Right.
Yes.
Right? That if I didn't have the position or the degrees or didn't do the films, that I should still like be respected. And I having done that just adds another layer of, you know, you're not gonna play with me, right?
Right.
But I think, you know, everybody.
Yeah. Myself working in a white institution, a private school. So there's more white teachers than there are black teachers there. And the level of respect, I have been somewhat disrespected in some cases. Sly remarks towards me. And it sometimes put me down. It sometimes put me down like, man, am I right for this? Am I a good enough teacher to teach these students? And it sometimes got to me, but sometimes I said to myself, I am good enough. I am here, I got the degree to prove it, and I will get the respect that I deserve. And it shows, not from the faculty, but from the students.
Okay.
And they know that I'm there for them. And my former boss, knows I'm there for the students as well. And it shows. Some of those students did not know how to read until I went into that classroom and taught them how to read. And those parents always ask for me back. Are you coming back, Mr. Lipford? I say, I don't know, it's up to the principal, not up to me. But it's the work and dedication I put into those students, and I get their respect. I don't need my faculty's respect. I only need theirs, the students.
Well, I might as well follow up. It's just a matter of like staying your course, and, you know, no matter what circumstances, all the question is just, you know, you gotta be there what's coming next. You know, as a man and an educator, et cetera, what position you're at, just what's coming next, you know? That's what you gotta expect.
I'm noticing a difference, and I don't know if it's a male-female thing, because I'm thinking about my husband, and we had a conversation a couple of days ago because I felt disrespected by somebody. And when I feel disrespected, I'm going to let you know. I'm going to let it be known that I see the injustice, and, you know, I'm going to go there. And he said to me, he was like, everything doesn't need a reaction. So I'm noticing that, like, with females, maybe we are more quicker to jump out there and say, no, this is wrong, versus men, it seems like I'm picking up, y'all just care about the people closest to you, and the rest of the world is just outside noise. Versus me, I'm like, no, what the outside noise saying? We need to address that. But I'm seeing a different shift.
I think that difference that, you know, that difference that you are sort of honing in on might be a necessary sort of balance.
Right.
Just sort of historically, given what was needed across gender lines in our community about, you know, in any particular given moment, what women were doing in many ways on the front lines.
Right.
And what African American men or black men were doing equally on the front lines, but also just in different spaces. So the arc of that.
It's in my paper that I just wrote for you. I talked about black women being at the forefront of so many different movements, like the bus boycott and civil rights and Black Lives Matter. That's tying into this moment for me too, and I'm saying maybe that is why, because we are a little more emotional, we are quicker to call it out.
I think it's part of it, Ryan. I don't know if I would say it's the reason why, but I think that it's probably a contributing factor, particularly across regional lines and what was happening in different spaces at different moments in time.
Right.
I think we can unpackage it to think about. And then, you know, I'm sure there are a whole bunch of psychological, sociological factors that go into that, but historically, you know.
Okay.
Well, you know, I want to be intellectually honest with you and say that, you know, a lot of the ways in which I move today have a lot to do with my growth and evolution and transformation as I have matured over time, and how I've learned. I'm from Central Islip, so I grew up in a situation where, you know, if you were disrespected, you had to respond to that.
Right.
And you had to respond to it either rhetorically, whether you came back at someone in a particular way, or physically. That's how I grew up, right? But over time, and I think maybe this speaks to what the advice that your husband gave you, you do learn that you don't have to match someone's energy in terms of how they approach you, right? And that you just kind of pick your battles. So for me, I've learned how to pick my battles, how to use my intellect over emotion, and to respond in ways that are more appropriate, right? And that, and I look long term. So I'm less likely to get into a road rage incident today, than maybe 15 years ago, 20 years ago, because I just do the simple math. Is my reaction to someone's disrespect worth the consequence that I'm gonna have to face should I let my emotions get the best of me? So I think part of that is just, evolution and growth. And then also a lot of it is unlearning a lot of internalized patriarchy and a lot of internalized sort of maleness, right? That you learn when you are growing up, that you just have to let go of.
Okay.
When you start to understand the meaning of that socialization and how it's not useful to you anymore in your current context. Maybe it worked for you when you were 17 or 18 or 25, but for me, as someone who's in my 50s, it doesn't work for me anymore, right? And I choose for it not to work for me anymore because I'm looking at the long view.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you have a perspective that can evolve into these perspectives, oftentimes it's men who have had both male and female influences, right? You could speak to an aunt, to a grandmother, to a mother, to an uncle, to a grandfather as well. So I think, when you get to a point where you're able to, reflect, you'll probably think about both the matriarch and the patriarchal figures that have given us sort of, moments to pause.
So I want to shift us a little bit to talk about love, family, and emotional inheritance. So I want to ask you guys, what did love look like for you all growing up?
Well, my mother,
Your
first of all,
mom.
I might as well. She always, honestly was just a huge inspiration for me is what to become a man is, receiving that love, each and every time, and just giving it back to not my mother, to my family, and again to others, rest of humanity, as Professor Sam said. So honestly, it's my thoughts on that to start off.
Okay.
I think mostly for myself, my mother, who was a strong influence on me, telling me not to give up, telling me to keep on going. Also my grandmother, and my uncle, who is a big part of our lives, and he worked so hard. He was a teacher, a professor.
Okay.
I think my whole family set of teachers. And he also encouraged me to continue with my education. And he also got a PhD. So who knows about me? So it was a lot of love. And without them, I don't think I would be here, pushing me forward.
But you're doing well. You filling the shoes. It looks like. Yeah.
Trying to.
Professor Archer.
What did love look like growing up is what you were saying?
Yes.
Yeah, I love this question because it's but for me, I think it was the love of family. I grew up, mom, father, sibling, grandmother, grandfather, right next door, right? And so I grew up initially in a mother-daughter house, right? So my mom was on the first floor, and grandma and granddad were upstairs. And that, looking back at that, what that meant, in the neighborhood we were in, at the moment we were in, I didn't have that sensibility, but I had the love of extended family, right? A grandfather and a father, a grandmother and a mother, which might have seemed like tight quarters, but the benefit. An old soul. I was an old soul at a young age because of. I was always told I was an old soul because grandma and grandpa was always around.
And President Sam?
The same things. The same things for me. I was raised by my grandparents. And I can only say this today. My mother gave a very loving sacrifice when she made my grandparents adopt me, which is an interesting story in and of itself. But I'd say for my grandmother, I had the most doting, loving, intentional grandmother anybody would ever ask. And all of her grandchildren would say, I was I was the most important person to her. And that's a feat. To have 20 grandkids think they're the only one. And I had that. My grandfather, interestingly, did two things for me. His love was to equip me, right? Because he was well aware of what kind of world I'll be going into. So he equipped me. But he also taught me very clearly how to give love, how to be loving, and that was what he expected of me, right? And I remember the night before he passed, he said, I love you. And we didn't know he was going to pass away. Maybe he did, but we didn't know. He said, I love you, but show me you love me by what you do with your grandmother, right? So he also told me what to do. And then finally I would say, I, like Jermaine, was raised by a community. And love from that community came in the form of high expectation. They were very clear. I was from age 3 called Dr. Sam's or Dr. Tim, right? From that age. And they said, there's nothing else, you will be a doctor. And that was it. Yeah, that was love.
Wow, that's powerful.
And Professor Hurd?
Well, for me, Ryan, love showed up in a lot of different ways. When I was young growing up, I was surrounded by love, but I was surrounded by a variety of different forms of love, or it took shape differently. So, you know, from my mother, I received tremendous unconditional love and support. I have this lasting image of my mother running down the sideline, you know, as I'm running, you know, on the field, you know, about to score a touchdown, and my mother running right next to me screaming, go Byron, go Byron, you know. That type of really love and that type of love and nurturance I received from my mother. My father was not expressive about his love. He never really said, I love you. It wasn't until he was in his 60s that he said, I love you, right? But he showed me that he loved me through his hard work, the fact that he stayed around and was present. He worked multiple jobs. He made sure that we had what we needed. That was his way of expressing his love. From my uncle, my mother's brother, I received a lot of tough love, high expectations. He was a doctor and a scientist, and so he had extremely high expectations, and he pushed and he prodded and he asked a lot of questions about what you were doing and why you were doing what you were doing, but it came from a place of love. And my grandfather was just the epitome of love in terms of how he expressed it. He wasn't a hyper-masculine man, but he expressed the full range of his manhood and his masculinity. And he always made sure, whenever he saw me, to hug me, right? Every single time that he was in my presence, he made sure to give me a hug, which is what I try to do with my daughter every day. Although she's a teenager now, so it's a little harder to do that. Yeah.
Okay. I think for me, what love looked like growing up is my father. My father was very communicative with us because he wasn't close by. So he always called. He always sent for us to come visit him. And then he was big on like quality time and doing things. My mom was tired all the time. She was like a single mother. So when we went to Philly to see him, was when we got to go-kart racing or batting cages, and he went out of his way to do those things with us because it wasn't typical for him. So I think for me, growing up was that effort I think he put in that I truly, truly appreciate so much now. But yeah. Let the record show Black men have always carried more than they were given language for. They have always been strong even when they needed space to be soft, and they have always been human even when the world refused to see them that way. Today we talked a little about identity, about responsibility, about love, a little healing, and what it really means to be him. To our guests, I want to thank you for your honesty, your vulnerability, and your truth. And to those watching this conversation, it does not end here. And then I also want to say to my father, Daryl Caston, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. This episode is to honor you. I thank you for what you gave me, for what you showed me, and for what I can now carry forward and continue. Thank you guys for your time today. This has been the Black Roundtable.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Okay.